and David Black from Maryland. They're going to talk about, it's a project, the Minebank Run Restoration and Water Quality Improvement. Dana Havlik is a division chief in the Highway Hydraulics Division at Maryland DOT. And 28 years of experience in water resources and environmental engineering. Dana leads engineering teams to support development and delivery of MDOT capital improvement and system preservation projects. Basically lots of things. She's responsible for fund management of roadway drainage improvements and water quality projects, including system preservation, remediation and capacity upgrades, restoration, which we'll hear about today, and functional enhancements, along with other environmental stewardship initiatives. Lots of responsibilities there. David Black is with RK&K Consultants, and David is a water resources engineer in bridge hydrology and hydraulics, modeling 1 and 2D, geomorphology, stream restoration, wetland creation and restoration. He's completed numerous bridge projects, new construction and retrofits, as well as stream restoration. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Good afternoon. I'm very happy to present our project, water quality project in Maryland. I don't know if you're familiar with state of Maryland. The biggest challenge for us, for DOTs and state highway, I work for state highway administration, this one unit of MDOT, is the funding and environmental regulations. Those two challenges we had to overcome with this project that was in design for a number of years and also in construction about 3, just finished a year ago. So it is an example where we incorporated infrastructure, drainage infrastructure and stormwater infrastructure improvements into ecological restoration, and we wanted to target a number of issues in one area with one contract mechanism. So the project is located in Central Maryland, in Baltimore County, near Towson. It's north of Baltimore. It is in Gunpowder River watershed. It's heavily urbanized, about 50% impervious cover. And it was mostly developed prior to stormwater management regulations, which are very strict in Maryland. So a lot of untreated stormwater, a lot of untreated impervious surfaces, of course impacting all the urban streams, like in many urban areas. So we set very ambitious project goals for this project, and our main concern was to address public safety. There was a number of erosion issues on the highway embankment. We were kind of losing Baltimore Beltway at one point, and also private property erosion. So there were public complaints for a number of years that were concerning to many local politicians. We also wanted to restore a number of failing drainage outfalls. There is a significant drainage system that was built many years ago along Beltway, and about 5 drainage outfalls were in really bad condition. As we were exploring the site, we were discovering more and more issues. So it became sort of a cluster project where we wanted to address a failing sewer line that was in the middle of a stream that was heavily eroded. And so one of the goals was obviously to restore those main channels, Minebank Run, along with the tributaries. And we were hoping to gain, some credit out of that mitigation, out of that restoration. We wanted to enhance the riparian buffer and create some wetlands, as well as we are looking for opportunities for water quality sites to offset some of the untreated pavement, the legacy pavement we call it. And the most ambitious goal was probably the biological uplift within the restoration project. So this was the project location. You can see there's a lot of drainage system coming all into the stream valley. and a lot of this drainage was either collapsing or under capacity. So we took a holistic approach to address all of these issues and integrated this improvements into safety improvements and ecological restoration. It has been a major challenge for us to get a project like these funded with federal contribution. Most of our drainage infrastructure and stormwater assets have to heavily rely on state funding, which is limited. So this was one of very few projects that was supported by Federal Highway for overall improvement, which actually made it happen finally. So we also looked at stream resiliency and upgrades, and this is what it means to us. This is what resiliency means to us when we incorporate all kind of issues and improvements into one site to create a resilient system that's sustainable. So here's it, what I just said in picture, just to show you the overview. The main point was to stabilize the eroding banks of the highway, as well as some of the backyards of private properties that were falling into the eroding outfall channel, and restore the main channel of Minebank run. And then we found opportunity where we could treat a significant amount of impervious surfaces of the highway by diverting some of the drainage and upgrading some of the drainage into one location. So after we set the goals, we set the objectives of the project, and basically this is what we did. We wanted to address the roadway embankment, improve stormwater drainage system, restore the degrading channel, and we accomplished about 2,300 linear feet of restoration. We relocated the sewer line for Baltimore County out of the channel, and also we committed to build a trail, running trail for the high school next to the stream that was using the stream valley actually for running. We still have to do that. That hasn't been completed. We obtained stream mitigation credits for another project, which was the same highway at the different location where we impacted streams and wetlands. So those impacts were offset by this project. And another objective was to gain some TMDL, or watershed restoration credit, from our MS4 permit, which was through the outfall stabilization. Water quality banking credit. I don't know how many DOTs have a water quality bank, but we do have one set up for 6-digit watershed that helps us sort of mitigate off-site stormwater requirements for projects where it's not feasible. So this project not only created a significant credit, but we needed to sort of pay back to a watershed that was in deficit. So that was another objective of this project. And we also obtained wetland mitigation credits within the floodplain. One of the ambitious objectives was to create aquatic habitat. Fish passage wasn't an option on at this location, but such an improvement would not be possible. But we still wanted to, within the limited reach we had, improve the biology. So we have a pre-construction and post-construction monitoring ongoing to see how effective this project was. All of this we wanted to achieve by innovative strategies and the latest technology and modeling. So 2D modeling was used for design, and hopefully we achieve the resilience design solutions at this location that is going to be sustainable. The overall result was basically integrated streams restoration and floodplain reconnection, creating riparian wetlands, and we achieved 1,600 linear feet of stream restoration mitigation credit and 3.1 acres of wetland mitigation credit at this floodplain. As far as water quality bank, we were able to divert enough untreated pavement to the Gore area of the interchange and constructed submerged ground wetland that provided 5.6 acres of water quality credit in Gunpowder River watershed, where we were in deficit. So this is the picture about a year after construction and after the rainfall. So at this point, I'm going to let David talk how we did it, what was the design strategy, and how we accomplished this.
Thank you, Dana. I'm probably going to be meeting someone outside to pick a fight, but I have to give credit to Dana and State Highway Administration. Maybe Justin would agree. They're a very progressive state highway, or a DOT, state DOT, and I've been very fortunate to work on this project. I've been a part of it longer than I want to admit. I probably had less gray hair at that time, but again, going back to the location that Dana described, here's the state of Maryland. Please be clear, Washington, D.C. is not part of Maryland. We want to be clear about that. That's why it's blue. It used to be, not anymore. Everything is about the Chesapeake Bay, again, as Dana described. Even though this is a little offset from the Chesapeake Bay, it's part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. There are, maybe you know, there are, I think starting in 2008, 2010, Chesapeake Bay TMDL, I believe the largest TMDL in the country. So there's been a lot of effort that consultants and State Highway has put effort into improving the bay. To drill in a little closer to the area, it's about a 1 square mile drainage area. To the north, as you see, this is all oriented north. To the north is one of 3 reservoirs north of Baltimore City. They were designed, I believe, cited by Abel Woolman in Baltimore City. He was, I think, sitting chair at Johns Hopkins University at one time. His son, you may know, Reds Woolman, from the Woolman pub account, but my understanding is Abel Woolman was the Wayne Gretzky of water treatment, and some have argued that he had an innate sense on where to put these reservoirs and the best place to put them, and that the rainfall is just a little different north of Baltimore. And there have been some arguments in the Minebank Run Valley that the rainfall is a little different there. We'll see, we'll drill into that. So it's about a square mile to the downstream end of the project. These are the streets nearby. Just to the southwest of the drainage area, or part of the drainage area, is in Towson. Towson, to put a cultural reference, is where Elaine Bennis was from the Seinfeld. But it's very dense. There's really not much difference between Baltimore City going into Towson. It's very dense. Could be called suburban, but a little more on the urban side. State Highway, their assets are in yellow. They don't control all of the roads. Baltimore County, the local municipality, carries some of them. So the project is in cooperation with Baltimore County, along with their sewer system. And this gives you some idea of the urbanization. Tried to do this on a scale where, you know, the hotter colors are the more impervious, but it is highly urbanized. Like I said, Rob Ryan in Baltimore County has argued that the rainfall in Minebank Run is very special. It comes pretty hot and heavy as it comes out of Towson, hot, literally hot. One of the things we do, and I was thinking about Dr. Bledsoe on the first day, you know, about stationarity or lack of stationarity, and he described land cover, rain, how it's changing, all of those things. And again, I'll point to State Highway. This is important for them, is looking at the historical record. You know, your boundary, your actual channel geometry. Where is the stream? Where is the river? That has changed my career in working with State Highway. It's very much focused. So what happened in the Minebank Run Valley? Well, it's called Minebank for a reason. There was a mine there at one time. Baltimore had the Canton Iron Works down by the harbor. Against one side of the valley, there was still a train track that the trains would come up and they would mine the bottom. I think there's 2 or 3 still furnaces on the valley wall. The Cromwell Valley Park, I believe it's called, the Baltimore County Park, is downstream a little bit, so they have these, you know, furnaces still there. So when you see an historical record like that in the mapping, and even going in the 20th century, you really start to see, I know in my career, I start to see how things have changed over time. Physics says the stream should be in the center of the valley or the lowest part of the valley. That's typically where water goes. Minebank Run is up against the side of the valley. And let me dig a little deeper about that. Hopefully you are recognizing the interchange right where the project is located. It's just to the north of the interchange. The Baltimore Beltway was put in the late 50s, early 60s in segments. The picture on the right, let's zoom in on that. The valley wall, this is looking east, the valley wall where you see the wood line before you see the homes, it is a geological feature. I'm not a geologist, but that is one of the arguments that I've heard Baltimore County Rob Ryan make, is that as the fronts come through, it kind of hits that valley wall and drops a lot of rain. I don't know enough to know if that's true or not. He seems pretty convinced about that. But the biggest thing is when the State Roads Commission, back in those days, came through to do this, in cooperation with Baltimore County back in those days, they cut a notch into that geological feature. You can see how it goes straight through. Our geotechnical engineers, as we were analyzing these very nice 1.5 to 1 road banks, which were probably state of the art at that time, there were big blocks of, large blocks, almost like karst geology in those fill slopes. That became problematic in terms of what if a contractor engages one of those, pulls it out, the slope could become very unstable, and we didn't want to do that. But it must have been as they were blasting through that valley wall that they just took it and dumped it right into the valley. So what did that mean for the stream? Getting back to the historical argument, there's the current path. It's on the west side of the valley. Based on records from back in 1950s, even earlier, we think it was more towards the center of the valley, even disturbed after the mining activity. So what does that do? It puts, I think it was done for construction needs. As they worked west, they were digging out that hillside, or that geological feature, and placing the road fill as they worked west. So they put the culvert, it's I think a 12-foot CMP culvert all the way against the valley wall, and diverted the stream up there. It was great for maintenance of stream flow to build the highway. There were consequences to that. You locally, and getting back to fish passage as well, I think it's important to look at this because you're creating a local high slope area, so you're making it steeper and deeper, which increases shear stress. So even at the top end of this project, and you can see it here, the Minebank was incised from the very beginning. Doing the historical research really helps to paint a forensic picture as to what happens. Do we want to take it back to 1750? Probably not, but where can we take it back? Where was it? Where is it now? Where do we need it to go? That was a big part of the design. Minebank Run also has more recent history with the Baltimore Ecosystem Project. I believe it started around 1998. I think it's somewhat headquarters at UMBC, University of Maryland Baltimore campus on the south side of Baltimore. And they looked at Baltimore as an urban ecosystem. Nitrogen is a stressor to that ecosystem. So what a lot of the studies that USGS did, and EPA, Paul Meyer at EPA, and others, they looked at stream restoration, and just search Minebank Run on the internet and search stream restoration, and the studies that were done there. You can get these documents, but they looked at stream restoration as a nitrogen fix, and there were even, I think, some of the conclusions were even the worst stream restoration improves water quality to some degree. That those high steep banks do have detriments, and but it's interesting. I think this is a good point because now that Dana's come through with the project, as you'll see these photographs and the ones she's shown, as it becomes more lush and more robust, it's going to improve in water quality over time, is what I believe, and that baseline data that they collected is there. So again, going back to the location, kind of repeating a little bit of what Dana said, there's the Minebank Run, hopefully you're oriented now. The cut is to the down right side of the photograph. Minebank Run, you can see that shape, how it was put up against the valley wall and brought down for what we think it was the ease of construction. There was a tributary coming in from the side there. Coming off that hill slope, it was perennial. There was groundwater coming out of that geological feature, and that was important in terms of protecting that water. It was cool water as it was coming out. And the sewer line. It crossed the stream in 2 locations. It was pretty shallow. I believe when Dana engaged Baltimore County, they were assessing the condition of it, and it just so happened that they were interested in doing repairs to it, which changed the project, and I'll demonstrate what that means. There were a couple areas, again, drilling a little deeper from what Dana described, of high erosion. One to the west, where there was some road embankment that was pretty bad, and one more toward the east that was right behind those townhomes. The residents there were concerned, and Dana was responding to their concerns. So you can see that fill material, that red sandy clay that was there, is just highly erodible, and you know, there's two of my co-workers for scale as to what that looked like. Again, more of the same, urban stream syndrome, you can call it whatever you want. There's the large, on the bottom right, the large 12-foot CMP with the outfall structure. State Highway is looking, I think they're progressing on expanding the Beltway there. If anyone knows Baltimore, that area gets pretty backed up in the afternoons and in the mornings. So I think they're looking at adding a lane. This project allowed accommodations to make that easier when they come through and do that. You can see the manhole in the center picture. It's right there in the stream. So what did we do? Again, drilling a little more down to what Dana had. The sewer line, that was the first thing was done. It was relocated to the one side of the valley, get it out of the valley. That changed the design, again, as I'll show you. The stream valley bottom, what was restored? The approach that we use, I would say it could be described as floodplain restoration. There was, as Dana mentioned, some wetland mitigation. It's not just in that spot, there were a couple of areas. So this will be monitored for 10 years to see the success of that wetland mitigation. And then also the water quality improvements with that submerged gravel wetlands in the gore. So getting to the good stuff on modeling, we did use two-flow, and this was an initial design. We tracked shear stress quite a bit to see stability of the stream. So, and we run at steady state to kind of take out the whole attenuation in the valley in terms of those discharges instead of a dynamic hydrograph. And because of the constraints, so I can see it, you probably can't necessarily, but this was constrained by the sewer line, and we had to weave and bob up and over it, and trying to get that floodplain reconnection as well as we could. You can see it's pretty hot. You know, the red is high shear stress. Again, and we're fighting against that decision years ago to put the culvert up on the valley wall, and it's fighting back down. We could not overcome it. Once we were able to kind of open things up a little bit with that sewer out of the line, you can see that very little is hot. The tributary is sitting very high. The outfall there was very high. We just add a little more stabilization. I have photos to show that. But we try to target 1 to 2 pounds of shear stress on the floodplain. We find that a well-accessed floodplain, you know, Justin used the term threshold earlier, that more like a threshold channel. We don't want to move the sediment. It'll move a little bit, but we don't want to move it too much. It's an urban system. There's not a whole lot of supply coming in. What is coming in is probably from the bed and banks. But we try to target that 1 to 2 pounds in the floodplain, so when it gets quickly up and out of the active channel, the slope changes of that hydraulic flow because it's going down valley now instead of meandering at a lower slope, but it's well vegetated. It really can withstand, the lush vegetation can really withstand you know, those forces out on the floodplain. And it also has water quality benefits. You now have, if you have sediment-laden water, which fine sediments will be there, these constructive floodplains tend to accommodate that sediment, keeps it out from downstream to prevent embeddedness on downstream reaches and things like that. So this was an early design. Again, we look at the maximum storm event, 100-year, to check it. Some natural channel design can be very channel-centric. They're not looking at the floodplain. Let's talk about the structure a little bit. It's fun. And I got some videos here as well. So talking about how the old culvert, the original culvert, was up against the valley wall, it was very important once the sewer was out of the way to redirect it down the valley, to redirect that energy, that momentum that's coming out of that against the valley wall and direct it down through the restoration project. You can see the red line is the path to get it down, directed down the valley in a good way. The culvert was extended to accommodate that extra lane that is coming. And then it was a USBR 7, I think it's called, 6, 7. a technique with the baffle wall, and it did redirect the flow. Now, look at the size of this thing. It really, having someone standing next to it, really shows the size of it. Plus, there is a plunge pool down below. We expected sediment. The project that I worked on 20-some years ago, upstream, had a lot of white, almost white beach sand. We're in the Piedmont, but getting close to the coastal plain, so, you know, in that transition area, there's a lot of that white sand. It choked up the channel quite a bit. It wasn't coming through very well. We expected a lot of that to precipitate out in that pool. And then you can just see the progression of more recent photos of the vegetation coming in, and it's, you know, our environmental scientists love putting the flowers, the wildflowers in there. It really does give a really nice appeal, even though it's highly urban in the area. We don't have a version of Flow 3D. They came in to give us a demonstration, and we asked them, hey, can you put this structure in there to see what it looks like? And I'm not sure. Oops. I don't know how on a Mac to push the button. Oh, geez. Well, too bad for Flow 3D. It is pretty cool. I'll see if I can get it to run a little bit later. Again, the USB-R Type 6 impact basin, because it was wetland mitigation, we put a lot of clay cores. We're up against the valley wall. The substrate looked a little more granular than what we'd see maybe in a natural valley bottom. We think the valley bottom was mined, so it was just a mess in there. So we put clay plugs in there to ensure that we had groundwater for those mitigation wetlands. Again, we don't want to come back there within the next 10 years to try to make it successful. So and also with the hydrology, the overbank flow, it gets quite a bit of hydrology. So. And here's just an overview of the project. Again, looking in the upstream direction, you can see on the left, that's the other outfall. It's a little steeper coming down. You saw the shear stress signature was a little hotter. But the valley is as wide as we could make it. That was fortunate because it got us under that 2 pounds per square foot on the floodplain. We have woody debris. Instead of the trees that were taken down, instead of hauling them off, we made structures that were within there. You can kind of see that in that photo. That's a really, really nice recent photo. And was this the one that, again, I don't know if it's going to work. We do have a website that maybe we can make it available. I don't know if we stuck it in here or not. I don't recall, where you can kind of, we have drone footage that you can kind of float through. I have some that I can share as well, but I think we're right on time.
Oh, yeah.
And any questions? And while you do that, I have an extra special bonus of running some of the, hopefully they work. So this was during a 10-year flood event. I think I was past the peak of the hydrograph, but you can see just waters everywhere. And anybody feel free to jump in with a question if you like, because I have a couple of these that I can run. Here's a better look of the valley. But you can see it just accesses the floodplain quite a bit. That does protect the riffles, that does protect the substrate of the active channel, and you know, the floodplain is taking those shear stresses. I think a lot of people say it floods all the time. We want it to flood all the time. And I am not a Mac user. I think that's probably obvious to you guys by now. But oh, okay, one last one. Here's the drone footage of the project. Ah, geez. So, any questions while you look at that? That was a lot of project to go through in 20 minutes, I'll say. So we kind of skimmed with nice pictures and videos, and except for Flow 3D.
So
did you actually rebuild and restore a lot of that channel as well?
Yeah, so the question is, did we rebuild a lot of the channel? Completely.
So I see all these riffles and whatnot in there.
We did. So the riffles, again, if you think about it, as soon as it gets out of bank, the flood flows go down valley. What we do is we do the active channel geometry and the riffles in a way that when that flow is coming up and over them, that they're actually protected. So if you have an incised channel and those flood flows are within that incised channel, it's going to pound on the riffle material and drop the slope of it and all kinds of things. You know, pools become riffles, riffles become pools, or they join together. So absolutely, we realigned the stream. The impacts were the history of the active channel alignment, or the previous channel alignment. It was so incised, it was against the valley wall, we couldn't do anything with it. And with the sewer being out of the way, it really, and with Dana's consent, we really open up the valley. And the floodplain is like a scrub shrub type wetland. That's what was targeted. And that'll become robust over time. This was flown 3 weeks ago. Even during a drought, it stays wet.
One other question. There was that 12-foot culvert at the upstream end, and that was extended?
So you can see, I don't know if you can see my arrow. It's now buried, that previous outlet. The question is, I think, about the extension and the 12-foot. It's in here and it was coming across. I am definitely not a Mac user. It was coming across this way and going into the valley wall on the right. So you can see the pipe right there. It's attached to the box, and the box is then directed downstream. So if I could get to the other videos, I thought I had some other ones where you can see all that turbulence inside that structure, but by the time it gets out, there is some sediment right there, and then we also have that rock deflector to, again, start that distribution to get it, during a flood event, to get it all the way out and onto the floodplain.
That's still a barrier to fish passage there, that it's not a hydraulic connection through there?
I was afraid you were going to ask that. No, this is being taped, right? The sad story is, and I don't want to point fingers at previous designers because it was 2004. The 12-foot culvert was already perched. It was put in 56. If I had asked Dana to move it, I don't think I'd be here today. I don't even think it would be above ground. So we had to deal with that. So up here, it was a problem, and this was the best way we could do it. So from here up, there are fish passage issues, no doubt. I don't know where they're going to go, except the Starbucks right up the street. But down below in Cowpens, and I know the person that designed it and everything, they put in this big rock pad, and that it was Rosgan based. I think I can say the name Dave Rosgan down here, I'm not sure, but it was Rosgan based, and during construction, I think it was 2004, there was a July storm that got up and out of bank, and it just ripped everything up during construction. So they kind of rethought everything, and I think it might have been a little bit of panic, but they put a lot of rock. Unfortunately, in that, I think, rush to get all that stabilized, there is still a fish passage issue down there. So, Dana doesn't have the budget to fix everything all the way up downstream. That's a easy way to get out of it, but it's true. So I would say, aquatic life, you got terrestrial there as well. They got a lot of places to go. It's nice right here.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay. Any others? Is this the siesta session, I think, is what it's called, so. Yes?
You mentioned a recreational trail going through this area. Where is that?
So in this photo, it's on the right. It was on the west side of the valley. The question was about the recreational trail. So right adjacent to this, there's a high school. You remember what it's called? Justin, it was a Lutheran school, and they changed their name. Concordia. Thank you, Dana. There's also Lock Raven High School, which is a public high school right downstream. Concordia had these trails along the valley wall from their school up on top, and it was recreational as well, but it was their cross-country team. And I think Lock Raven, the public school downstream, came up and ran that as well. again, as the EPA here. The interesting thing is one of the first meetings we had in EPA was there. Their biggest concern was that trail, that it was going to erode and everything. It's not a problem at all. It's mulch covered, it's completely done, but the school is excited, and I think I'm answering your question. The school is excited because it's a trail that goes down to the valley bottom. They see this valley as a classroom, you know, that they can go down. Now they can access it. Before they really couldn't. It was really a wandering trail, but there were commitments that Dana made with the school that just haven't completely come to fruition yet, and we probably don't want to talk too much about that. But the trail will be put in eventually, yes. Does that answer your question?
What was the public reaction to this?
When? Before, during, after?
What did they think?
So the question is about public reaction. Do you want me to take this? I'll try, and Dana will correct me and tell me what I said. My experience, I'll say generically, my experience is most of the public doesn't know stream restoration until the bucket starts swinging. And that's probably true with just about any construction and with the DOTs here. And that's what happened. I think I can say that State Highway, again, I credit them, they took responsibility for that and said, we need to do better in the future. I think we were part of RK&K and State Highway. We gave examples in the area and educated the public, and I think the most vocal person when buckets started swinging actually became the best advocate. I went to the University of Maryland. Dr. Arthur Johnson was one of my professors there. He gave us a speech on the last day of school saying, you've been given knowledge that most of the public doesn't know, so it's your job to act in their best interest. We all take an oath if we're a PE in here. And I take that to heart, you know, and explaining to them why we're doing what we're doing, as much as they may not like it, because no one likes the trees coming down. Ultimately, it's to the benefit of the public. I know I'm thinking more of my grandkids and how they can enjoy this rather than the people that are living there now. I know they don't want to hear that, but that's how I'm thinking. So did that answer your question? Dana, do you want to add?
Let me just add.
Dig me out of a hole?
The tree clearing is never popular, especially not in Maryland. We had to do a lot of public outreach. There were groups that were happy with the project and groups that were not, whoever was impacted by what. But after reaching out to them, explaining them, walking them through the projects, we even put out some newsletter and we had a poster on a site. They understood, and some of them were worried about trees, some of them were worried about turtles. Well, the turtles will come back, the trees will come back. The people who have been impacted by erosion are happy, and we of course pleased all the local elected officials because they have been notified about these issues many times. And this project, I am embarrassed to say, took over a decade overall, and from the point we started.
It was my fault. It was my fault.
But we lost funding, we got funding, lost funding. So, you know, design and permitting was extremely difficult. The EPA was on site. So we dealt with all environmental agencies you can think of. And finally we, you know, succeeded. Hopefully it will turn out in a few years, you know, few growing seasons, we get what we expected and, you know, meet the commitments we made.
Concordia is elated. They love, I mean, what an opportunity to the, you know, science teachers there
Go to stream.
on a nice day to go right down the stream, and so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.